everyone, I'm Vibha Chauhan and welcome to Chauhan Classes Fun are Clear. So today I will explain Class 9th Geography Chapter 3 and our chapter is Drainage. So drainage. Now in this chapter basically we are going to look at the river systems for our country. We will see about different river systems, river basins, their origin and their mouth point, and we will see about lakes as well. So basically in this chapter overall we are going to discuss about the drainage basins, about the drainage system of our country. Now let's clear the doubt first that what are drainage systems. Now here drainage means that, the term drainage means that the river system of an area. Now river system of an area, that means that when a river is coming, it is not that much big river, but because many small rivers, many small streams that are known as tributaries join it, and then it becomes a main river, a very big river, and finally it goes to a very big water body, that is either a lake or a sea or an ocean. So that all, you could say that in an area, particular area is known as the drainage system. That is how the river drains from one point to another point. And another term is that drainage basin. Now drainage basin means that a single one particular river system of an area. So that river system of an area is known as a drainage, but here one single river is known as a drainage basin. So that you could say that about the meaning of drainage basin. Now many students get confused between drainage and drainage basin, so it is very important to clear it as well. Now next is that all of you might have seen in the maps that two rivers or water bodies change their directions because of an elevated area such as mountains or any uphold area. That is called as the water divide. That means when there is a very kind of elevated area or a kind of mountain or hill, and due to that two rivers change their directions. Like for example in opposite directions they go. Because of that point of that, you could say that uphold area, and that is called as the water divide. That could also be seen, you could say that in many of the rivers of India. So that is about some of the important terms that we're going to discuss in this chapter. So that we will basically see about the rivers of our country, river basin, river system, about whole their story we will discuss in this chapter. So without ado, let's start our chapter with our first topic, that is drainage system in India. So drainage systems in India. Now you know what, that because of the relief of our subcontinent, not just India but whole subcontinent, because many rivers just don't originate in India or don't go from India, because many rivers are there which go from 2 or 3 countries. So that's why we'll see that because of the relief of the subcontinent, you could say that there are many various, you could say that many number of rivers that are flowing in our country, and you could say that in a proper system as well, and accordingly they can be divided into 2 systems. You could say they can be broader divisions of our drainage system into 2 types. Now first one is that Himalayan rivers, and the second one is the Peninsula Rivers. Now as all, you can say that what are those rivers just by seeing their names. Now Himalayan rivers which originate from the Himalayan mountains, and the Peninsula region, Peninsula rivers are those rivers that originate from the Peninsula Plateau of our country, from the Central Highlands or from the Deccan Plateau. So you could say that just, and there are many more differences as well. It is not that just they originate in same origin are differences, then they are different, but there are many more differences among them. Now what are those differences? Let's discuss. Now first let us discuss about the Himalayan rivers. Now Himalayan rivers are usually, their courses are usually very large, and you know what that because they originate from a mountain, that much big mountain system, you know that Himalayan range that is a very big, that covers most of the northeastern border of our country, and that's why all those rivers, most of the rivers that originate from that part have a large deposit of silt and sand, and that you could say that also make floodplains, many floodplains, and you could say that those those Himalayan rivers make different types of natural phenomena, like for example meanders, oxbow lakes, and many more things. You could say many more waterfalls. Most of the rivers, not just all rivers, because there can be some exceptions as well. Now meanders here, as well as all of you know that you have already studied in your class 6 or class 7th, that is that the river just doesn't go straight, it has to move, you know, that it makes loops, and those loops are known as meanders. And sometimes what happens that when a river is going and with making loops, and after many years what happens that due to the deposition of silt and sand, a particular part of that river that is in shape of oxbow is cut down and known as oxbow lake. So you could say that there are different natural phenomena of the Himalayan rivers, like meanders, waterfalls, and the oxbow lakes, and many more things. And due to the deposition, floodplains are also created. So that you could say that is the structure of our Himalayan rivers. Now most of the important Himalayan rivers are the Brahmaputra, the Indus, and the Ganga. Now what happens that if we talk about the Peninsula River, now here you could say that there is a very big difference of perennial and the seasonal rivers, because Himalayan rivers, most of the Himalayan rivers are the perennial rivers. Perennial rivers, that means that throughout the year they have water in them, a large amount of water, because they are dependent, because they originate from the glaciers and the mountain systems, and that's why they have water in them throughout the year, in all months of the year, 12 months in a year you could say. But if we compare it to the Peninsula rivers, what happens that Peninsula rivers are seasonal. Most of the Peninsula rivers are seasonal because they don't have that much glacier. They are totally dependent into the rainfall, and you could say that according to season their amount of water also changes in their channels, you could say. And that you could say that the Peninsula River can also be dried, because if there is no rainfall, and because they are totally dependent on the rainfall, that's why they are called as the seasonal rivers. And if we talk about the courses of the Peninsula River, then their courses are also very shallow, you could say, and not that much large. You have seen about some of the examples of Peninsula rivers are Godavari, Kaveri, Krishna, Mahanadi, and many more rivers. So you could say that there are many differences between the Himalayan rivers and the Peninsula rivers. Not just by their name they are different, not but just their origination they are different, but there are many more differences into them. Like for example, those rivers that originate from the peninsular plateaus, from the peninsular area, that are Peninsula River, what happens that they don't have that much deposition, because you could say that they don't come from that much mountain range, big mountain range, and that's why you could say that about it. And most of the rivers of Himalayan rivers, you could say that always have their mouth discharged in the Bay of Bengal. But here in this cases what happens that there are many peninsular rivers which go through Arabian Sea as well, like the Narmada River and the Tapi River, that we will discuss later in this chapter. So there are many differences between these two river systems, between these two drainage systems of our country, that are the Himalayan systems, the Himalayan rivers, and the Peninsula rivers. Now here another thing is of drainage pattern. Now we have seen that there are drainage systems and the broad divisions of the drainage systems, but there are drainage patterns as well. Drainage patterns, that means a pattern of river in which it is flowing, and there can be differences, changes in the drainage patterns because of the area of that land and the underlying rock structure and the climatic conditions. So you could say that these are the factors of the changes in the drainage patterns, that are underlying rock structure or the climatic conditions or that land. You could say the seasonal conditions, and there can be, accordingly on the basis of these factors, we can divide the drainage patterns into 4 types, that are dendritic, trellis, rectangular, and radial. Now first one is that dendritic. Now dendritic, what happens in in this drainage pattern, what happens that you could say that if there is a land, and because of that land slopes, the river is flowing. The river is flowing in any direction because of the slope of that area, and that structure would be called as a dendritic. And you know what, that in all cases what happens that river and its tributaries resemble an image of the branches of a tree, because just think about that, if there is a very big land and there are slopes, so the river would not flow just in one direction. It would make kind of loops and kind of an image of the branches of a tree. So that is about the pattern, drainage pattern, that is the dendritic pattern. The next pattern is trellis pattern. Now the trellis drainage pattern here means that you know what, that if there is a land and there are soft rocks and the hard rocks that are parallel to each other, now what would happen that the river would go towards the soft rock, because river can't break the hard rock that easily. It will take a lot of more time, and that's why that river would flow into the soft rocks, and it would make a kind of right angles. So in trellis drainage pattern, what happens that all the tributaries river flow in a kind of right angle at 90 degrees in many parts of India. So you could say that it is because of the structure of that land, because the soft rocks and the hard rocks are parallel to each other, and that's why that river is making an angle of 90 degrees, and thus you could say that tributaries are also joining it at 90 degrees. The third drainage pattern is rectangular drainage pattern. Now in rectangular drainage pattern, what happens that suppose if there is a land and that is binded very, you could say that very powerful, that land is very powerful, very hard, you could say, and what happens that if it is very hard, if it is very, its composition is very hard, you could say in texture, and then what happens that river comes and just would flow straight, and it would make kind of 90-degree right angle as well, because it doesn't have any kind of slopes. It is just hard and very strong land. And after that, what happens that when that river comes, all its tributaries will also join and will come in one and will make a kind of rectangle, you could say, because just think about that, if there is a very hard rock, if there is a very hard land that is very strong, then the river would not have any kind of slope and it would just flow straight, and when the tributaries join it, it will make a kind of right angles at 90 degrees and it will make a kind of rectangle as well. Now next and last drainage pattern is radial drainage pattern. Now in radial drainage pattern, what happens that just as in the case of water divide, just think about that, if there is any very high area, you could say that a very hill or any kind of high mountain that is a very high, that is uphold area, and the river is flowing because of that uphold area, the river has changed its direction, the river is going in that direction because of the slope given by that uphold area, then that pattern will be called as a radial pattern, radial drainage pattern. So you could say that these are major drainage patterns for rivers. You could say that there are four: dendritic, then trellis, then rectangular, and then comes the radial, that have different because of the different land structure or the seasonal climatic condition or the rock structure. So you could say that that is about the drainage systems of our country. Now next topic is the Himalayan Rivers. So the Himalayan Rivers, now we have seen that the inner drainage systems can be divided into two broad divisions. There can be two broad divisions, that are the Himalayan Rivers and the Peninsula Rivers. So first let us discuss about the Himalayan Rivers. Now there are three major Himalayan rivers, that are the Ganga River, the Indus River and the Brahmaputra River. And here also we can see the concept of water divide that we will discuss later in this chapter. And as all of you know that there can be many of differences between the Himalayan rivers and the Peninsula Rivers. And one of the most, you could say that major difference is of deltas and estuaries. Now you know what, that almost all the Himalayan rivers form deltas. Deltas, as all of you know, that when the river is about to discharge in any big sea or ocean, then what happens that it splits into many parts, in very small parts, into channels, you could say, and there is a land between them, and that is around in a triangular shape, and that land is known as the delta, that we will also discuss later in this chapter. And you know what, that most of the Peninsula River don't make any kind of deltas, and those are known as the estuaries because they just go straight discharge in that ocean or sea. So that is the difference between them. Now let us discuss about the Himalayan rivers. Now let us see about our Himalayan rivers, the three major Himalayan rivers. Now first river is the Indus River system. So the Indus River system. Now let us discuss first about the Indus River system. River system, as all of you know that the river system, a river along with its tributaries may be called as a river system. Now let us discuss the first river, that is our Indus River. Indus River that originates from the Tibet region of China, and there is a lake that is known as the Mansarovar Lake. So this Indus River originates from that region. There is a pond that is known as Mahakutumbuk Pond, and from that point it originates, and then you could say that it flows in opposite direction. Accordingly, many rivers go in that, and you could say that it would go to China in that region, it would go discharge in Bay of Bengal, but it flows to the Ladakh region of our country, that is Ladakh Pass. Ladakh region, as all of you know, that is in Union Territory of our country and is located in around Jammu and Kashmir. So you could say that it enters the Ladakh region of our country and thus enters India. And after that, Ladakh, you could say that is the only point where it joins, where it comes into the India, and after that it goes to POK, that is Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. And after that, in that POK, it covers two regions, that are Baltistan and next is Gilgit. So these are two regions where it flows, you could say, and after that it flows to the region of Pakistan. Now when it goes to Pakistan, when it enters the Pakistan a little bit, you could say that a little bit forward, what happens at the region, what happens that many rivers, many tributaries join it. Now many tributaries that are Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bias, and many more tributaries that join it, and that join it in Pakistan. But in India as well, many tributaries join it. Like for example, in India, the rivers that join it, the tributaries that join it are the Jaskar, the Shyok, and the Narmada Rivers. So you could say that these are the tributaries of Indus. You know what, that those tributaries that join it in Pakistan, what happens that those tributaries furthermore earlier join each other, and after that, as combining as one river, they join the Indus River, and after that you could say that it discharges at Arabian Sea. So you could say that Indus River, that is one of the longest river of the world, not the largest river, as all of you know that longest according to its length is about 2,880 kilometers, that is 2,880 kilometers. Now its estimated value, and you could say that in books it is given as 2,900, but the exact length is about 2,880 kilometers, and you could say that makes it one of the longest river of the world. Longest, not the largest, because its area is not that much, but its length is that much. So you could say that is the flowing structure of the Indus River. Indus River, that you could say that a little bit less than 1/3 of it flows in India, because most of its part flows into the Pakistan, and that's why you may have heard many of the political leaders say that we will stop Indus River, because Indus River is a lifeline of the Pakistan. It is the main lifeline river system of Pakistan, you could say, because all the lifeline of Pakistan, agriculture and the electricity, hydroelectricity is based on the Indus River, and that's why you may have heard many of the political leaders say that they would stop the Indus River, and that will stop the lifeline of Pakistan. But they cannot do that. Why they can't do that? You have just heard that. Have you ever seen it being done? It is because of the Indus Water Treaty of 1960. Now there was a treaty between India and Pakistan in 1960, and according to that treaty, what happened that India could only use 20% of the Indus River, of the water of Indus River, and that's why we are obliged to that international treaty, because we can break that treaty, but that would you could say that reduce the reputation of our country in the international level, and that's why we can't do that. We can't stop the water of Indus in Pakistan. It is a main lifeline of Pakistan, you could say. So you could say that Indus that comes from China, from the Tibet region of China, and then comes into the India, then POK, then Pakistan, and then finally flows into the Arabian Sea. So you could say that that is the structure of Indus River. Now Indus River, you could say that its water, that 20% of water that is given to India is used in the region of Punjab and Haryana for the agricultural products. You could say that for the agricultural purposes, for the agricultural production, because water is very important for any agricultural production, and that's why the water of Indus River is used for the agricultural production in those states, because it just passes, but you could say that it just passes a little bit in our country, and that's why we can't use all of the water of Indus River. So you could say that that is of the Indus River. Now our next river system is the Ganga River system. So the Ganga River system. Now you know what, that Ganga, that is a lifeline of our country. You could say that in the northern part, the Ganga River is very important, and its origination is also very kind of unique structure in our country. You could say that we say that it originates from the Gomukh region of Himalayan range. But what happens actually is that you could say that there is a river that is Bhagirathi from the Gangotri glacier in the Himalayan range. So it comes from that region, and at the Devprayag region of Uttarakhand it joins the river Alaknanda. Now these two rivers join each other, and after that the Ganga River emerges. You could say that, and after that Ganga River emerges from the mountains on the plains. Because of the joining of these two rivers, Ganga River is made, and it is named as Ganga, as all of you know that, because it is from the Gangotri glacier. If you see, Bhagirathi River is from the Gangotri glacier, and that's why the Ganga River is named as the Ganga River. So you could say that by the joining of those two rivers, the Ganga River is made. Ganga River is originated, and from Uttarakhand it flows to the region of Jharkhand. Now when it goes to Jharkhand, what happens that it bifurcates into two paths. Now first part, one part goes to West Bengal, and there in West Bengal it is known as the Hooghly River. You may have heard about the Kolkata city that is on the bank of Hooghly River. So Hooghly River is the name of Ganga in that region. And the next part, that is the main stream, goes to the Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh you could say that it is known as the Padma River. It is known as the Padma River, and later on when another river, that is the Brahmaputra River, joins it is known as the Jamuna River. So you could say that, and after that both paths go into the Bay of Bengal. Both paths, they start at the Bay of Bengal. So you could say that this is a kind of structure of our Ganga River. It is a very mighty river in our country. Now it is the largest, you could say the longest river of our country. If we look at the origination from discharge, its total length is about 2,525 kilometers, that is 2,525 kilometers. So you could say that that is the longest river of our country, largest and as well as longest, because you know what, that Indus River that has its own length, but it is not originating from our country. That's why it won't be counted. So you could say that is about the Ganga River. And if you look at the Ganga River, it originates from the Uttarakhand region, and after that there are many tributaries of Ganga River as well. There you could say that one of the most important tributary is Yamuna River. Yamuna River that flows parallel to it, and after that at the region of Prayagraj it joins Ganga River. You could say that Yamuna River that is also from the Himalayan range, that is also from the Himalayan mountains, and flows parallel to the Ganga River, and after that it joins Ganga River at the Prayagraj region of Uttar Pradesh. Now when Yamuna River joins Ganga River, what happens that there are many tributaries that had already joined Yamuna, and after that with all those tributaries, that Yamuna joins the Ganga River. And most important tributaries of Ganga River are the Ghagra, the Kosi, Gadak, and many more rivers. You could say that as the Kosi, Son, Son, Betwa, Kane, and there are many rivers that join. You could say that over 50 rivers, more than 50 rivers are there, small or big streams, small big rivers that join Ganga River. And you know what, that from both sides, from the left bank as well as from the right bank, on the you could say that from the respect of Ganga River. Now you know what, that there can be tributaries from two sides, that are left bank and the right bank. Now it is seen from the perspective of that river. So that river is flowing from this side, then it will be right this side and left this side, and if it is flowing, then it would be opposite. So you could say that is to be seen from the perspective of that river. And that is, you could say that there are many more tributaries of Ganga River and has many names as well, because in different regions it is obvious that it will be called by different names, and that's why it has many different names, like Panma in Bangladesh and Hooghly in West Bengal, and many more rivers. So that is about the Ganga River, that is 25 kilometers long, and you could say that as the supporting lifeline of our country. You know what, that its water is very important. Many reservoirs are also built on Ganga River, and you know what, that it is a sign of purity in our country as well. As it comes from the Himalayan range, from the glaciers, that's why it has a very large deposit of silt and sand as well, very large deposits as well, and that's why you could say that many floodplains are also created by it. And if there is also saying that you could say that there are herbs that are found in Ganga River as well. So you could say that many uses of that river and the supporting lifeline of our country. Now next river basin is the Brahmaputra River Basin. Now the Brahmaputra River Basin, Brahmaputra, that has also been known by different names in different areas. Now it also originates from the Tibet region near Mansarova Lake in China. So you could say that it also originates from that region, and there it is known as the Sangpo River, but has a very large part of this river, of this Brahmaputra River, is in China, is in Tibet region. And after that, you know what, that when it comes to the Namcha region of Tibet, it makes a U-turn and comes to the Arunachal Pradesh of our country. It comes to Arunachal Pradesh, and there it is known as the Dihang River. So it is known as the Dihang River, and many tributaries like Dibang and Luna rivers join it. And after that, it comes to Assam as a very big river, because you know that Brahmaputra River, that is a very large river. As all of you could say that its width, its breadth is so much. You could say that many people also drown in this river because of its breadth. So you could say that it is not just long, but the breadth, very wide river as well. So you could say that Brahmaputra River, after entering the region of Assam, it is known as Brahmaputra River, and after that it flows to Bangladesh, and there it is called as Jamna River, and it is known as Jamna River. But after that, what happens that in a region of Bangladesh, Ganga and Brahmaputra join each other, and there is another regional river of that Bangladesh that is known as the Meghna River. So when these three rivers join each other together, they are called as Meghna River. And after that, Brahmaputra River makes a delta as well. You know that in the region of Bengal, you could say, in the region of Assam, it makes a delta, that is the Sundarban Delta. You could say that it is the largest delta. You could say that it is the largest delta in the world, and also Royal Bengal tigers are also found in this Sundarban Delta. So you could say that Sundarban deltas, that are the largest delta of the world, and there you could find the Royal Bengal tigers that are very fierce, you could say that, ferocious, you could say. So you could say that it discharges in the Bay of Bengal as it goes into the Bangladesh, and it becomes Meghna River, and after that it discharges in the Bay of Bengal. So you could say that is about the Brahmaputra River. Now you have to see that Brahmaputra River comes from China, and because of the cold region, you could say that in that region, in the Tibet region, there is so much cold, so there isn't that much deposit in this river, and is also not that much wide river. But when it comes to the region of Arunachal Pradesh and Assam in our country, it becomes so wide and has large deposits, and thus you could say that in those regions, growing of, or you could say that rice is also done, because in Brahmaputra it is a very wide river and thus so much of water is collected. As in that region there is a very large rainfall, so a lot of water is collected in Brahmaputra river, and after that it is also useful for agriculture production. And you know what, that when Brahmaputra rivers comes into the region of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, you could say that it has a very lot of benefits to the soil as well, as there is a lot of water that is collected in that river, and that's why the beds of that river goes out and causes a very large devastation of the life and the vegetation, you could say, but it enriches the soil as well. You could say that there are always cases of floods because of Brahmaputra river, because if just think about that, if there is a very large rainfall in that region, so it's obvious that there will be floods because of that river. It has devastation, a very great devastation among the life, among the animals and among the natural vegetation, but it enriches the soil as well, make it more and more fertile. So you could say that are about the Himalayan rivers. Now in the last chapter we had seen that there is a riverine island that is made on the Brahmaputra river, that is a Majuli island. Now Majuli island is also known that is the riverine island and largest unpopulated island, riverine island of the world. So you could say that you have to remember the points as well, about the points that Brahmaputra comes from where and goes to where, discharges at where, and has the different types of tributaries as well, and makes the Sundarban deltas, the largest deltas of the world as well. So that is about the Himalayan rivers, about the three major Himalayan rivers, the Indus River, then comes our Ganga River, and then comes our Brahmaputra River. Now you know what, that the Brahmaputra basin, the Ganga Brahmaputra basin that is formed in northeastern part of our country, is also one of the largest basin of our world, you could say in the world. You know what, that the largest basin in the world is of Amazon River. Amazon River is the largest river of the world, and that's why its basin is also the largest in the world, you could say. Its drainage basin is the largest in the world, and you could say that different varieties in the Amazon rainforest are found. So that is about the Himalayan rivers. Now next topic is the Peninsula Rivers. So the Peninsula Rivers. Now as we have discussed about the Himalayan rivers, now next broad category is of the Peninsula Rivers. Now as from the name, those Peninsula Rivers that come from the peninsular, you could say the peninsular plateau of our country, and even most of them are from the Western Ghats. Western Ghats is also know that cover from north to south the western coast. So most of them come from the Western Ghats, and almost all of them flow towards the eastwards, like that discharge in the Bay of Bengal. But there are some exceptions. There are many small rivers or the streams, you could say that flow towards the westwards as well, that discharge in the Arabian Sea as well. And the only large river, the only two large river that flow towards the Arabian Sea, that come from the Peninsula Plateau of our country but goes towards the westwards, that goes towards the Arabian Sea, are the Narmada and Tapi River, that we will also discuss later. Just calm down, you could say. So you could say that these are about the Peninsula Rivers. Most of them originates from the Western Ghats and goes to Bay of Bengal. Now they also form basins, but comparatively to the Himalayan rivers, they form a very small, you could say very small basins as compared to that of Himalayan rivers. So just it is very obvious, because they don't have that much glacier, total dependent on rainfall, so they don't make that much big, you could say, big glacier, big basin in our country. So let's discuss some of the major peninsular rivers one by one. Now first river that we are going to discuss is the Narmada Basin. So the Narmada Basin. So first one is Narmada River and its basin. Basins, as all of you know that what they are, as we have discussed in the starting of this chapter. Now first let us discuss about the Narmada River. Now if we talk about the origination of the Narmada River, it comes from the state of Madhya Pradesh near the Amarkantak Hills. Now there are Amarkantak Hills in the Madhya Pradesh, and then from there Narmada River originates, and then it goes to the boundary of Maharashtra and then to Gujarat. Now if we talk about the total length of this river, then it is 1312 kilometers and it discharges at the Arabian Sea. You have to notice that it flows towards westwards, not to eastwards, and that's why it discharges at the Arabian Sea, not at the Bay of Bengal. Now Narmada River has its own importance. You know what, that it comes from the Amarkantak hills and has its religious beliefs as well. And there are major 3 dams that are built on this river, that are Omkareshwar Dam, Indira Sagar Dam and the Sardar Sarovar Dam. Sardar Sarovar Dam, that is the largest dam of our country, so that is also built on this river. And in Gujarat, you know what, that on the bank of this river, the world's largest statue is also built, that is Statue of Unity. So the Statue of Unity is also built alongside the bank of this river. So you could say that it also has its own importance. And if we talk about its tributaries, then all the tributaries of Narmada River are very small, you could say, aren't of that much importance, you could say, and are very small and short rivers that submerge into this river and thus make it a very large river. So you could say that it is also of a very great importance in the peninsular part of our country, and that is about the Narmada River. Now next river that we are going to discuss is the Tapi Basin. So the Tapi River Basin. Now this Tapi River is also known as the Tapti River in some of the places of our country. So don't get confused between Tapi and Tapti, because both names are correct. Now this Tapi River flows parallel to the Narmada River. It arises from the Satpura ranges of Madhya Pradesh, and then it goes to Maharashtra, and then to Gujarat, and then finally in the Arabian Sea. But its length is too much short when compared to the Narmada River, as we have seen that the length of Narmada River is about 1312 kilometers, but the length of this river, of Tapi River, is about 724 kilometers. So very small than compared to the Narmada. And Tapi, this flows from Madhya Pradesh to Arabian Sea. And you could say that it just flows parallel, a kind of parallel to the Narmada River. And you know what, that its tributaries are also very short rivers, you could say. And if we talk about the major tributary of this river, then it would be Purna River. Purna River, that is one of the more major rivers, you could say, major tributary of this river. And this Tapi River has its own basin in the region of Gujarat. You could say that its basin includes the region of Gujarat, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. So that is about the Tapi River or the Tapti River. Now the next basin is the Godavari Basin. So the Godavari Basin. Now Godavari Basin is the largest. The Godavari River is the largest river of our peninsular India. This is the largest peninsular river, you could say, in our country. Now you know what, that Godavari River is a lifeline of the southern part of our country, of the South India, because you know what, that it is a very big river. Its length is about 1465 kilometers, and that's why it has its own importance in the South India, because it is also called as the Dakshin Ganga. Now Dakshin means the direction that is south, and Ganga is often added that is a lifeline of our country, and that's why it is known as the lifeline of the South India. And it also originates from the Maharashtra at the state, you could say, at the district Nashik. Now there is a Nashik, and there are hill mountains, you could say, that are known as the Triambak Mountains. So from the Triambak Mountains it originates, and after that it makes a very big basin in the southern part of our country. Now the basin of this river, the basin of Godavari River, includes Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha as well. So it does have a very large basin in our country. And you know what, that it is the second, you could say that after Ganga it is the second largest in our country. So that is about the Godavari River. It originates from that river, and some of the major tributaries of the Godavari River are Vanganga, Panganga, Pranhita and many more rivers. You know that these supporting rivers are long as well as small rivers. That's why you could say that not all the supporting rivers are given. Some of the most important rivers are only given. So you could say that that is about the Godavari River, that has its own, you could say, that has its own importance, and it flows towards eastwards and discharges at the Bay of Bengal. It doesn't go towards the Arabian Sea, it flows towards the Bay of Bengal, and it passes through the states Maharashtra, then Karnataka, and then you could say that turns right, and then flows towards Bay of Bengal. So you could say that its starting point is the Bay of Bengal, and its basin is also very long, very large, you could say. Now next river that we are going to discuss is the Mahanadi. The Mahanadi River, the Mahanadi River basin. Now this Mahanadi River, you could say that originates from the region of Chhattisgarh and goes to Orissa and then Bay of Bengal. Now there are many short rivers, short tributaries of this river, and this Mahanadi, you know what, that has a length of around 800 kilometers. So you could say that is the length of this river, and that isn't that much, you could say. This Mahanadi River is also, you could say that, a very large of Peninsula Rivers. So one of the most important Peninsula River, this Mahanadi River. And if you talk about its importance, if you talk about the tributaries, then there are small tributaries like Pari River and the Hathni River and many more rivers that are its tributaries. So that is about the Mahanadi River. That's total length is about 800 kilometers, and you could say that it is about the Mahanadi River. Now next subtopic is the Krishna Basin. So the Krishna Basin. Now the total length of this river is about 1300 kilometers. Now its total length is 1300 kilometers, and it also originates from the region of Maharashtra. You know that it originates from the Mahabaleshwar hills from the Maharashtra, and then it makes a basin. It makes a basin in the southern part of our country, and that basin includes Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and you know that Tamil Nadu as well. And it discharges at the Bay of Bengal. So you could say that Godavari also discharges at the Bay of Bengal, and the Krishna also discharges at the Bay of Bengal. Now this river has its own importance because its water, there have been many water disputes about the water distribution of this river, and there have been many pacts among the states of our country as well. So you could say that is about the Krishna River. Now next river that we are going to discuss is the Kaveri Basin. So the Kaveri Basin. Now the total length of this Kaveri River is 800 kilometers, and it originates from the region of Tamil Nadu. There are Brahmagiri mountains and Brahmagiri hills in that region, and it originates from that region, and it makes a basin that includes Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Andhra Pradesh, and finally it discharges at the Bay of Bengal. So that is about the Krishna River, and that is about the Kaveri River. And after that, what happens, you know that Kaveri River makes the second largest waterfall in our country, that is known as the Shiva Samudram. So you could say that is a South Indian name, and pronunciation can be wrong as well. And that is the second largest waterfall in our country, not the first largest waterfall in our country. So you could say that, and this river is important because of its hydroelectric power. You know that from the water of this river, the hydroelectric power is made. From the the electricity is converted, is generated from the water of this river. So it is obvious that there would be disputes of this water as well. So that is about the Kaveri River. Now we have discussed some of the major peninsular rivers that are Narmada, Mahanadi, Godavari, Kaveri, Krishna, Tapi, and there are many more rivers as well of great importance like Damodar, Batrana, Subarnakha, and many more rivers, Subarnarekha, and many more rivers that are peninsular rivers but have not been given in this book, because if we come to discuss all rivers of our country, then it would be impossible to learn, because there are many more small rivers in our country. Just look at the Ganga River. If you look at the Ganga River, then you would know that there are more than 50 rivers, 50 more tributaries of Ganga. So you could say that there are many rivers in our country that are small and large as well, that are the lifeline of our country. Now that we have discussed about the rivers that can be categorized into the Himalayan rivers that are perennial and the Peninsula Rivers that are seasonal. Now let us discuss something about lakes as well. So let's start with our next topic, that is lakes. So lakes. Now till now we have discussed about the rivers. Now let us discuss something about lakes as well. Now all of you might have heard about the Dal Lake of Kashmir, that is known all over the world for its beauty, for its natural beauty, and that also attract many of tourists from the foreign countries, from the abroad, to come in our country to see that place. Dal Lake, as all of you know that Dal Lake, boat houses and shikaras of Kashmir. But just think about that that if there weren't any lakes, there would be so much natural beauty? Of course there won't be, because the lakes are a source of natural beauty as well as the important, essential for our country as well. Lakes, as all of you know, that there are many lakes in our country, like just as I said that Dal lakes in Kashmir, and in Kashmir there are many other lakes. Now there can be formation of lakes by nature as well as you could say artificial lakes as well. Artificial lakes are those that are used for reserving the water of river. Like for example, if we talk about the reservoir of any river, like for example whenever dams are built, so it's obvious that there would be some lakes as well to conserve that water, and that would be lake as well. So that would be an artificial lake. So you could say that that is about the artificial lake, that is because of the making dams on the rivers. But you know what, that lakes have natural beauty only when they are created by the nature. Now as we had said about the Dal lake, like there are many more lakes. There can be two types of lakes, that are freshwater lakes and the saltwater lakes. Now just think about that. We had discussed a time about Sambar lake. Sambar lake, that is in Rajasthan, and is a saltwater lake. Now it is used for making salt, producing salt in that area. Now lakes can also be categorized according to their creature, you could say that according to their nature. Like there can be two types of lakes, that can be seasonal and that can be all throughout the year. Like for example the Dal lake, that is all throughout the year because it is from a glacier. But if we talk about the Sambar lake, it is a seasonal lake because it doesn't happen to be whole year. As all of you know that it is a semi-arid region, and that's why that Sambar lake doesn't appear for the whole year. It disappears in the seasons of summer, and that's why you could say that lakes can be of two types. Now we have seen about there can be different types of formation of lakes. Like for example, if you think about the glaciers, whenever depressions are made because of glaciers, then what would happen, that glacier would melt down, and after that it would become a very beautiful lake. And after that you could say that, as we had talked about the oxbow lakes, you know that the cutoff of the meanders of the river is known as the oxbow lakes. So because of the floodplains, oxbow lakes are also created. So you could say that there are different lakes in our country, and the largest freshwater lake in our country is the Vular lake in the Jammu and Kashmir. So that is the largest freshwater lake, not the saltwater lake, you could say. So that is the largest freshwater lake in our country, that is Vular lake. So you could say that is about the lakes. And if we talk about some of the major important lakes in our country, then it would be Dal lake, Loktak lake, Nainital lake, and the Sambar lake, and many more lakes that are present in the northern part of the country, the part of Uttarakhand, that are known for its natural beauty, that are in the Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, you could say, and in the region of Kashmir as well. So you could say that is about the lakes. And apart from that, lake has its own importance, and how is it? So let's discuss. Now lakes are important for the preventing the flow of a river, for turning the flow of a river. Just think about that. If there is a lake and if there is a river, then what would happen, that whenever there is an overflow of river, in the case of floods, that lake would help to prevent the flow of that river, overflow of that river. And in contrast, in the summer, what would happen, that in the summer it would make the flow of water of the river as well from its own water. So you could say that lakes are useful for the flow of water as well. And after that, it is for the ecosystem, adequate ecosystem of our country, and for the environment as well, for the natural beauty as well, and for the tourist attraction as well. So tourist attraction that would lead the economy of our country. So that is about the lakes. Now there are numerous lakes in our country, like Lake Chilika. That we had discussed, the largest saltwater lake in our country. In the last chapter, in the previous chapter, we had seen about the Lake Chilika, and here you could say that the largest freshwater lake is Vular lake. So that is about the lakes. Now next our topic is role of rivers in the economy. So role of rivers in economy. Now we have discussed in the whole chapter about the rivers. So let's discuss what is their role. What are their roles in the economy, in the growing economy of our country? So you could say that it's just simple, because rivers are for the lifeline of our country, for the navigation, for tourist attraction, for the occupation of the people as well, and you could say that for the hydroelectricity, for generating electricity in our country, hydropower in our country, and for many purposes water is used of the rivers. As all of you know that if there are rivers, a prominent amount of adequate water is always needed, because you know what, that on the earth 71% of the earth's surface is covered with water, but in that 71% 97% is unfresh water, is the salt water, and the remaining 3%, in that 3% around 1/3 is trapped. You could say that it's trapped as ice, in the forms of ice sheets or glaciers. So you could say that a very little amount of water is on the earth for use, and that has to be saved as well. So you could say that there is a very great role of rivers in the economy as well. How is it so? Let's discuss. Now just think about that. A prominent amount of adequate water is needed, and people would settle down earlier, in many years ago, people would settle down in that areas and would make a civilization, and after that those civilizations turned up to be big cities around this you could say that around those rivers. So you could say that, and those big cities are creating the economy. So you could say that a very great role of river in the economy as well. And as I said that the river is very important for the agriculture production as well. Now agriculture produce, for any agriculture produce, what you need, that river water as well. In the canals, the water is coming from the river. So river has a great role in the agriculture production, and that would lead the economy of our country. So for the lifeline of our country, for the economy of our country, water, the river water is very important, essential you could say, because it is used for navigation and for the fishing activities, occupations of the people, for the hydropower, for generating the electricity you could say, and for the agriculture production as well. Agriculture production is the most important here. The main lifeline, because the livelihood of the people is based on the river water. So now our next and last topic of our chapter is river pollution. So river pollution, one of the biggest problem in our country. Now this river pollution, let's discuss something about it, like the background story of the river pollution. Now river pollution, what are the main causes of the river pollution? If we discuss it like that, then the river pollution under the growing urbanization, growing agriculture production, growing industrialization, what it needs? It needs more and more water. So there has been ever growing population, and there has been ever growing demand for water as well. And that's why a lot of amount of water is being drained out from the river, creating to the river pollution. And apart from that, there is a very lot of amount of the untreated sewage and the chemical, all those dirt of those industries is also being emptied in these rivers. So you could say that river has been polluted by all those growing industrialization, urbanization, untreated sewage, you could say trash, you could say, and all those you could say the dust of our country that has been emptied into the rivers as well. And if those things are being emptied into the river, it decreases the capacity of the river as well to dilute the pollution that has been done, that could be seen in the river Ganga. And in the recent days, you might have seen about the river Yamuna. If you pass that city, if you pass that area in the Delhi region, then you will see the pollution of the Yamuna River. So you could say that river is being polluted much and more, and you could say that is a big problem for humanity as well, for the human beings as well, because if that pollution increases, that will affect the health of the people as well, and the river is being polluted as well. Just think about that. If there isn't any river and if there isn't any water, then what would happen to our country? So river pollution is being more and more bigger problem, and there have been many movements, that there have been many actions, laws, acts that have been made by the government of India to stop the pollution, to stop the river pollution. Like for example, for the river Ganga, there is a project named Namami Gange, and for the many rivers as well. So you could say that many projects are being started, are being introduced to the people to clean their rivers, to cleanse the rivers, to purify them. Because just think about that, many laws, acts and projects have been started, but just in the ground reality among the people, is there any value for the river? There are still many people who don't value our rivers, you could say, who still pollute our river. So that has to be considered as well. That has to be taken as a debate, you could say. That has to be taken as a topic for a debate. So that you could say that is all we have discussed in this chapter. Now in this chapter we have seen about the drainage system of our country. Now from starting to whole we have seen what is drainage system. After that we have seen about the Himalayan rivers and the Peninsula Rivers. Now most important Himalayan rivers are the Brahmaputra River, Indus River and the Ganga River. Ganga River, that is the most important river of our country, because all of the rivers originate from a depot point near Mahanadi Lake in the Tibet of China. But the Ganga is originating from our country and with a unique structure as well. And we have also discussed about the Peninsula Rivers, that are the Narmada, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, Mahanadi and Tapi rivers. Now there isn't sufficient, you could say, data about you could say that in more and more detail about those rivers, because if you look into that river, then you would find more and more facts about it. So that is all we have discussed in this chapter. I've discussed all topics and subtopics, and the next chapters of this book will be covered in the further upcoming videos. So thank you very much.